welcome everyone. My name is Jill. I'm so happy to be here with you today. We have an incredible opportunity to speak with our wonderful guests. I'm here today live with Megan Cook and Ivan Vicente from the Nautilus Exploration Program. So I'm here today with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, and we are bringing science and conservation to life in classrooms all around the world. I know we have friends joining us today from all corners of the world. We have classrooms in Toronto, but we've also got students joining us from Sweden. So it is so wonderful to be here in this global village with you. So we'll be here for the next 40 minutes, and we will be speaking with our very special guests. And we would love to get your questions. So if you're joining us on YouTube or if you're joining us here on camera, please send those questions in. We love them, and we can't wait to hear what you have to say about this great presentation today. So enough from me. I'm going to bring in our guests, Megan and Ivan. Hello.
Good morning. At least morning here in the Central Pacific. We are so excited to be with you.
Great. Well, we're so happy to have you. This is going to be great. I know that you are great friends of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, and you love sharing everything that has to do with the Nautilus program with our students. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm just going to say, take it away. It's all up to you. Thank you so much.
Sounds perfect. Well, good morning, everyone. Wherever you are in the world, you have taken a very fast journey to come out here to the Central Pacific Ocean, where we're so thrilled to welcome you on board Exploration Vessel Nautilus. Here's a live view at the weather outside. A nice sunrise happening, a few red-footed boobies, which will tell you more about the wildlife that we're seeing here. But first, I want to introduce you to where Yvonne and I are sitting right now. This is Exploration Vessel Nautilus. She's 224 feet long, home to 45 of us right now, like a little floating city. All kinds of different professionals out here, scientists, engineers, filmmakers, storytellers, students, and ourselves. So before we get too far into it, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Megan Cook. I'm sailing as the co-expedition lead and the communications lead on this expedition.
Ivan Vicente. I'm with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I'm here as a guest educator.
So we are diving, our whole mission out here is to explore the deep ocean. So places that have never been seen before and to share it live with the world. We want to tell you a little about where we are right now. So wherever you are on the world, maybe you can identify if you're on this map or maybe not. Our friends in Sweden, you'd be somewhere back here on this part of the globe. So with North America here, Asia, Australia here, you can see the Hawaiian Islands. And this is where our journey began. We launched this expedition from Oahu, Hawaii. And we traveled for 3 days, 3 days of driving a ship out here to Johnston Atoll and the exclusive economic zone. So the area of the ocean managed by the United States is a big circle around this atoll. And do you want to tell us a little bit about what does NWR stand for? What is Johnston Atoll all about?
Yeah, Johnston Atoll is another precious unit of the National Wildlife Refuge System. That's what NWR stands for, National Wildlife Refuge, which is a designated area protected under federal government, similar to national parks with National Park Service, only primarily protected for wildlife first. And some of these national wildlife refuges across the nation, some of them are off limits to the public, and this is an example of one of them. Even if it wasn't, it's so remote, there'll be nobody wanting to be out there because there's several reasons why Johnston actually is preserved as a national wildlife refuge that is off limits to the public. We have such high densities of birds. We don't want to see them disturbed. They're doing really well out there. Mainly, Johnston was established for seabirds. We have a an outstanding array of seabirds out there, including red-footed boobies like the one you're seeing in the picture. We also have red-tailed tropic birds, and that's the signature species of Johnston Atoll. We have the highest colony in the world of red-tailed tropic birds is actually at Johnston Atoll. Fascinating array of seabirds. They're all doing really well. Close to 1 million birds total between all the species. Lots of terns. We do not have albatross in Johnston, but we have 14 amazing species of seabirds and shorebirds.
It's been really incredible. And as we look at the landscape here, I just want to make sure we give a scale of where we are. So, okay, we are looking at that big circle from before, that exclusive economic zone. In Johnston Atoll, in this map, things that are near sea level or shallow are bright white. And we are looking at this teeny tiny little atoll here, surrounded by big, very deep ocean. The squiggly lines that cross this are areas where we have high resolution mapping data. That is data where we could actually see mountains underwater, like all of these chains of mountains and ridges. So that is what our work is doing. So there's a combination story here of birds, including occasionally some sea turtles and life that you would expect in the shallow coral reef environment. And then where we are on our journey down in these deep, deep seamounts underwater. So in our work, we are diving 13,000 feet down with giant robots, and it's live right now. So let's take a quick live view at what is happening directly beneath the sheet, which is diving with remotely operated vehicles Hercules and Atalanta. So this view is the view from one robot onto another. So this is Atalanta looking down a little bit like a helicopter in the sky, looking down at ROV Hercules, and then ROV Hercules is looking at the seafloor. So we are flying up the side of a underwater ancient volcano. We think this volcano is somewhere in the ballpark between 70 and 110 million years old, which means it erupted at the time dinosaurs were walking around the planet. But 70 to 110 million years old is a huge range. And we'd like to know a little more specifically, where did this come from? When did it erupt? And then in addition, we'd really like to understand what kind of animals live down here. Deep sea corals are similarly important to shallow water corals, that they protect all kinds of species. They make forests for animals to live in. Baby animals live in deep sea coral forests. And so when we think about our ocean from shallow to deep, these are really precious places for biodiversity. So this video clip is just showing you some of the different shapes and colors, some of the different types of corals that we find in the deep sea. It's been really exciting so far, flying up these mountains and seeing what we can see. Ivan,
Yeah.
what are some of your favorite sightings you've seen underwater so far?
Oh, I am fascinated with the glass sponges
Mm.
and also the fan corals that we're seeing down here. I mean, these are the most unexplored places in the planet, and this is like descending a mountain underwater to discover species that many that have never been seen, and almost on every expedition, there's new species found. So, but corals and sponges in these places are very unique. They're so peculiar and fascinating invertebrates to discover.
Yeah, what you're looking at right now is a glass sponge with a bunch of crinoids on it. So this is an animal, although it looks like I'm not sure what, but this is an animal that filter feeds for food. It makes a skeleton out of silica, the same thing that, if you were to go tap on, your window in school or a car windshield, that is silica, that is glass, and that is what these animals make their, whole skeleton and structure out of. Here's a different type of glass sponge. I like these. I think they look kind of like a mailbox or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. There's definitely a lot of analogies that can be made with what
Mhm.
these different creatures that what they look like, and we'd love to hear from people about what how they feel that what their comparisons are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, those are kind of our main objectives. And we have just begun this expedition. So, this is a 3.5 week journey that we will be on, diving on seamounts and deep ridges in and around that big circle around Johnston Atoll. An expedition just about 3 weeks ago came out to this area and conducted high resolution mapping data, which is step one of the exploration process for us. Um, I can show you here the area that we've been diving in yesterday on this seamount and today on this seamount. But what I want to draw your attention to is how clear these two areas are. You can see lots of details, lots of bumps and ridges, and that data comes from our mapping system. So we use sound, kind of like a fish finder, if you're familiar with that, or an echo. We send sound down, it bounces back. That tells us how far away the seafloor is, and we can do that millions of times with sound pulses and kind of create this visual map. But everywhere around this area is really murky or kind of like unclear, no detail in those areas. So our team came down and created maps like this one so that we could find details like, I think corals might like to live on this thin spine, or maybe they'd like to live over here. And maybe that would be an area we'd want to put the robots into the ocean and go exploring.
Yeah, so first we discovered the seamounts, which are discovered for the very first time, at least in their character. And then we identified, like Megan said, which places may seem more prominent, more spectacular to find new sea life.
I think we might have a little bit of a freezing problem, which I think is pretty normal when you're out at sea. I wonder if we can get the crew of the Nautilus back with us. Megan and Yvonne, if you can hear me, we do have a freeze on you right now, but we hope to get you back really soon. Maybe if you want to drop off and rejoin us, that would be great. I love seeing the questions that are coming into the chat. This is already so great, and what a treat this is to have them. So I hope we can get them back soon. Let's just see. Oh, they've dropped off, so I think they're going to join us in a second. So just as a reminder, we're going to have lots of time to ask Megan and Yvonne questions, so please send them in. I love your comments. Those will be shared with them as well. So yeah, give us a couple of seconds, and we're going to get back online in just 1 minute.
Oh, we're back.
We're back. Fantastic.
Internet
Great.
in the middle of the ocean, not always the
I'm
strongest.
so impressed that it's going this well so far. So this is great. Super. Okay, keep. We're all having a wonderful time. There are great questions rolling in already. So keep going, and we'll get back to you for Q&A in a sec. Thanks, guys.
Amazing. I did already see Frank's question of how do we have internet in the deep ocean? So, let's just go ahead and answer that one really quickly since the internet decided to let us answer that question itself. Here on the ship, I want to draw your attention to the big golf ball, volleyball, big white round ball that is on the top of the ship. That is a stabilized satellite system inside. We rent a satellite in space each year, and we rent the bandwidth off of it so that we can broadcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But what's happening inside that satellite system is a little computer antenna is trying to point at a single point in space to kind of look directly at a satellite and send data and information there. So occasionally, if the ship is bumping around too much, it loses track of where that satellite is, and it takes it a minute to get back. And that's where our feeds will sometimes drop out. But one of the funny, I've never sailed on a ship that has internet like Nautilus before. So it's a funny part to come to see, to travel to these really remote places and then get a text message or, be on Instagram. But it's also one of the things, explorers at home, I challenge you that it's one of the things to really experience nature and to be out here. To be present away from your devices is also one of the best things about going to sea. Get to know the people around you.
Yes, especially when we get to interact with everybody on the boat. So that's the only way that we can make this boat the happiest and most knowledgeable boat that we can, right? Is by interactions among each other. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are so many interesting people here on the ship. I just want to encourage you also to know that whatever your passion is for the ocean, or if you're still discovering that, you can have many passions in life, right? It might be ocean and science. It might be ocean and solving problems. It might be oceans and telling stories. And all of those things have come together here. Maybe you want to be a professional mariner. Maybe you want to be a chef. Our chefs are some of the most important people on this whole journey. So there's lots of ways to find yourself in a role like this. But maybe we'll pause there. I'm excited to answer the questions and talk about what interests you, whether it's life at sea, the types of life we are getting to encounter, or the technology, whatever you'd like to talk about.
Thanks so much, guys. I love seeing the crew members that are working behind you. It looks like it's so funny that something at sea can also look like something, from outer space. It looks like NASA back there. What are they doing, the people who are working behind you?
Yeah, this is our control room. This is mission control for the ROVs. So this is where the team is controlling the dive right now. So we have 2 rows of folks in here, and I'll pop another view. The people directly behind us here, starting from this corner, is our data logger. That is where our ocean science interns sit. They are making observations of the seafloor, recording information like what we collect, capturing pictures of what we see from the live video. Our watch lead and science leads are here. They're also helping keep the dive on time and on track, making decisions about where we fly. And then over here is a science communication fellow who's answering questions from the world and helping facilitate the conversation. Here in the front row, Yvonne, do you want to talk through who is up there, what they're up to?
In the very front row are those that are actually controlling 2 things, mainly the Hercules, which is the ROV that is right now capturing amazing scenery of this incredible mount. And then there's the videography folks that are making sure that we capture all these amazing images, clips, the footage that is going to really help our scientists determine many things. So the ROV is also controlled with an arm, and folks in the front row get to control the devices of the ROV for extracting samples, which are very important for further science. Yes.
Definitely. So we work 24 hours a day on the ship. Once you come out to somewhere this remote, we want to keep the work going and get as much done as we can. So teams in the control van trade off every 4 hours, and there's 3 teams that rotate around the clock and around the clock. Robots don't need to eat, sleep, or go to the bathroom. So once they go into the ocean, they can just stay there. And our first dive was 24 hours, and we're planning for this dive to last another 24 hours. Awesome. Let's
That's
go
great.
to another
So
question.
it really does take, like you said, like a floating city, like a floating village. It takes so many people to make this run, and it sounds like a great crew. That's fantastic. Okay, so I'm in Toronto, you're in the Johnston Atoll, and Frank is going to come to us from Sweden. So this is truly a moment of being all together from very far away. Hi, Frank.
Hello.
Hello. Do you have a question for Megan and Yvonne?
Well, like in chat, I just wanted to ask, what kind of food do the chefs cook?
What kind of food do the chefs cook? Do you want to talk about that, Yvonne?
Yeah, they definitely provide us with a vast variety of meals, including vegan, vegetarian, and other than, and everything in the spectrum from all types of grains, from quinoa to couscous and rice and beans and lots of salad and some meats and some fish, and it's great. And the tofu is even delicious too.
It really is. It's kind of buffet style. So you end up with lots of options, in a salad bar. They cook so much food. It's amazing. 3 o'clock is cookie time every day. So there's always some kind of dessert at 3 o'clock, as if we needed that and more food. But they take great, Ibru and Anatoly are our 2 chefs right now, and they cook amazing food for us, take great care of us. There's also a gym on board. So like if, that is your interest in balancing out how much food you want to eat, you can also do that.
Okay, I'm officially instating 3 o'clock cookie time for now in every part of my life. 3 o'clock, definitely. If you guys can do it.
It's a very important, rule to live by. Be an explorer. Be an explorer. Have cookie
That's
time.
right. I will feel more, scientific if I'm having the cookie at 3 o'clock. That's perfect. Great. Well, thank you so much, Frank. All right. So Ms. De Silva's grade 6-7 class is going to come up to us next. Hi, Mrs. De Silva.
Hello. We're so excited. So Erin is actually going to ask a question. We are a virtual class, so Erin will be asking a question virtually. So go ahead, Erin.
How did you know how to make this boat? Did you test the pressure of the deep sea ocean? And if you did, how did you test them?
let me make sure I got the question right. I may have missed the beginning part, but how did we test the pressures for the robots before sending them to the deep sea ocean? Is that the question?
For the boat that you're in.
Oh, okay. Yes. Great question. Pressure is a really important variable that we have to contend with in working in the deep sea. So we solve that in a couple ways. All of the people on Nautilus stay up on the surface. So we are on top of the ship right now inside a control van. That means we can involve more people than if we were locking folks into a submarine and sending them down to the seafloor. But we do send the robots, remotely operated vehicle, Hercules and Argus. And so those robots are built to withstand the pressure by being made out of very particular materials. So metal, steel, aluminum, and then this yellow top on the top of Hercules is called syntactic foam. And you can see, and it's a special foam, like a foam that might be in your sneakers or a foam that might be in your kitchen sponge. If you squeeze it and you like press it in really hard, it's going to squish, right? That foam is going to be soft. This foam is made of resin, plastic resin, and glass beads. So no matter how hard we or the ocean tries to squish it, it's not actually going to compress. And that's really important when we go down, 12,000 feet, like Hercules is diving right now, that it stay buoyant is the word that we'd say for floaty, in order to not get squished and crushed. So it takes a lot of, careful planning and careful engineering to think about how is this going to go? How is it going to go when we lower it down in the deep sea? And when we bring cameras or different, thermometers or sensors onto the vehicle, they might get pressure tested at a university or at a lab before they come on Hercules, so we can make sure they're going to be okay when they go down to the seafloor. Anything that's been super surprising about interacting with the vehicles so far, and seeing them in 3D for you for the first time?
No, it's absolutely amazing. And then you wonder, right? All these creatures and their adaptations. They're down there when we discover them, especially particularly fish. When we see them and jellyfish, it's like, okay, well, how come they deal? How do they deal with the pressure, right? So those are questions that I have asked the scientists here. But it's definitely these ROVs are absolutely incredible in their design, and I'm sure it took a lot of trial and error to design them to perfection.
Definitely. Amazing, right? The fish isn't made of syntactic foam.
That's right, true.
They have none of that.
They just know. We don't know how they know, but they just know. That's right. That's great. So we've got a couple comments coming in from our friends who are joining us on YouTube, and we have the Ernest Public School in Toronto, and Adrian, who's in grade 2, wants to know, why is there a volcano in the middle of the ocean? How does that happen?
What a good question, Adrian. Thank you for it. We are learning a lot about how the skin of the planet is moving around and changing, right? There are tectonic plates that shift all around. I think about it sometimes like if you had an orange and the peel of the orange was like squishing around and moving. And when we're looking at really long time periods, like 100 million years, we know that the plates are in different places 100 million years ago than they are now. And they move really slowly, like they move about the pace that your fingernails grow. And it takes 100 million years to move them across the Pacific. But one of the things we're trying to learn, Adrian, is how did they form? Maybe they formed at a hot spot, like the Hawaiian Islands, where lava is squishing up through weak spots or cracks in those plates and forming volcanoes. Maybe they formed at the boundary of a couple of those plates, but we're trying to kind of roll back time by looking at clues that are inside the rocks to know, where was that boundary? Where did this get formed for the first time? So it's a bit of a question, but we know there have been volcanoes for millions and millions and millions of years on the planet. And like looking at their tracks, it's almost like a treasure map or something, right? A scavenger hunt that we're looking for clues and we're trying to put the whole story back together.
It's amazing how much rocks can actually tell us, and they're looking for particularly what they call a fresh rock, which is rocks that haven't been over mineralized with things that are intruding upon all those layers that they're able to extract so much information from. So there's a lot of fresh rocks down there, but we have to select a lot to find the best ones.
Definitely. Definitely. I studied biology, so everything we get to learn about geology and rocks is like new to me and really, really exciting to find out how rocks change over time. I didn't know anything about that.
Geology rocks, right?
Yes, it does.
All right, I'm going to bring Mrs. De Silva's class back in for another question. You're on mute, Mrs. De Silva. There's always one.
It's amazing how many times my students say that a day. So we have two questions. One of the questions is, what is the deepest anyone has ever been before in the Marianas Trench? And do you ever find any creatures that are unknown? And do you name them, or how does that work? So those are our two questions. Thank you.
Oh no, I fear we may have lost Megan and Yvonne again, as they seem to be frozen. And unfortunately, I just can't answer these questions. I have just as many questions as you guys do about how all of this works, but these are so great. And I hope that we can get them back soon. It seems like a pretty quick turnaround time. Oh, there they've gone. They've just popped off. So we'll wait a couple of seconds to get them back. Thank you so much for all of these questions. They're so great. And if for any reason we're not able to get to everyone's questions today, we can send these to Megan and to Yvonne, and they can give us the answers and we can send those to you. So even if we don't get to everybody's great questions, we hope that we can still get you the information. So I'm just going to give Megan and Yvonne 1 second to come back, and we'll be right with you.
We're building suspense. Now we're back.
Well, I was saying to everybody, I certainly can't answer these questions. So we hope we're so glad to have you back, because yes, the suspense has really been building. So we were asking about how deep, about the Marianas Trench, and then also about discovering new species and how do you name them? How do you classify them?
Yeah. Well, let's start with the Marianas Trench. Maybe Nautilus hasn't ever been there. I would love to go. That is totally on my, explorer list. As the ship has moved all around the world, we're now in sort of the central Pacific. And the Marianas Trench is out in the western Pacific. So haven't gotten there yet. But the Marianas Trench is almost 11,000 meters deep, which is deeper than ROV Hercules can go. So we need to develop some new tools to go there. There certainly are remotely operated vehicles and crewed submersibles that can go to the bottom of the Marianas Trench. There are about, I think at last count, there's a really exciting team called Deep Six right now who is, sorry, wrong number, five deep, who are taking crewed missions to the seafloor in the Marianas Trench. So there used to only be about 3 people that had gone down there. And now I think we're up somewhere like 15 or 20 people have been to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. So technology totally exists to go there. We designed our robots to go to 4,000 meters because you can get to 50% of the world's ocean. You can get to half the world's ocean is shallower than 4,000 meters. And since we've only explored about 5% of the ocean, we know we still have a lot of work to do at the depths that we can get to. But totally the dream to build a deeper diving vehicle. Yeah.
And we're likely to encounter more life at these depths than, over 36,000 feet. So it's in a way, it's more exciting, actually, to me personally, to be at this depth, which is less than half of what you encounter in the Mariana Trench.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's amazing that life can be adapted all the way down there. But maybe some more high density kind of communities, the things that we think about like coral forests, live more in these depths. Mm-hmm. So that's a really good question. Yeah. And then how do you know a species and name a new species is, I think, the next question. That is a great question. It takes quite a bit of time. You could think about like all the people that you know, right? They're different sizes, they're different shapes. We might have different hair color, we might have different skin color, but we're in all the species. We're all human, right? We have so much more in common than we have any difference that you could see visually. The same thing happens when you're flying a robot along the seafloor and you see something that, like, maybe it's a slightly different color than one you've seen before. Is that truly a new species? Hard to say just by looking at it with a camera. So that's part of why we collect samples. They come back to the lab and then they get super detailed analysis, maybe genetic analysis, maybe microscope analysis, to look at their structures, things that would make them different. And that can sometimes take years. Steve was telling me about some sponges that, it was over a decade before they got described.
Wow.
So it's a long process, and we're just at the kind of the beginning of that story. But then naming things, would definitely work with communities and cultures around here to be sure that things are given appropriate names. These waters, although Johnston Island has never been inhabited by Polynesian or Melanesian communities full time, it is certainly part of the ocean that they used in their historical practice, and giving something a name can convey a lot of meaning, right? In the same way that I'm sure you appreciate when people call you by your name because it means something to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes they discover not just new genus of species, but also even new orders, which is fascinating. But yeah, that's a great explanation, Megan. You couldn't have put that better. Yeah.
But we find new things all the time, so it's really one of the other things I think is exciting is finding things in new neighborhoods. And as a scientist, we call that a range expansion, right? And that would mean maybe we know this from a different island or a different part of the ocean. And it turns out they live here too, right? And so for so much of the deep sea, we're still just like, who lives where? Who do we know? What are they doing there? And those are the kind of like basic questions we have to know about the ocean.
That's so cool. And it seems like, like there's always more to discover. We're always making new ocean discoveries, and especially in these kind of far-flung corners of the world, there's so much waiting for us to discover. You never know. So we're getting a lot of questions with the same theme. So I'm going to kind of make this into a broader theme question, because we've got some questions coming in from YouTube and also from Mr. Silva's class, kind of about the spooky mystery of the ocean, that everybody wants to know if you have had any kind of experience finding something surprising, or had, some kind of, I don't know, otherworldly experience that maybe gave you shivers down your spine or something like that. What's your greatest spooky ocean story that you can share with us? Oh no. Again, Megan and Yvonne are building suspense for this great spooky question. So we're going to give them just a minute to join us. I'm sure they'll be back very soon, and they'll be able to tell us about their spooky ocean stories. Just waiting for them to join us again. We'll be wrapping up in about 5-10 minutes. We are so happy to have so many of you here with us today. This is such a great group. And here we are, Megan and Yvonne, back with us. Hey.
Everyone for your understanding.
Perfect. This is great. Happy to have you back. So do you have any wild and crazy stories, any kind of mysterious, spooky things that have happened, or maybe something special that you want to share with us?
From even previous expeditions?
Yeah.
From previous explorations?
Take anything. Yeah.
I guess I'd ask, has there been anything kind of spooky or surprising in your first dive?
My only experience so far has only been one dive from last night, from yesterday actually. It lasted about 24 hours. I think that the most interesting thing, actually, it was a purple sea cucumber that got my attention the most, because it was just precious and beautiful to see this contrast of all this basalt all around, all this sediment, and then this purple beautiful creature in the middle of this desert. It's amazing.
That's a really cool one. I love sea cucumbers too. Sometimes they're see-through, which is pretty cool, and maybe you could say that's like a little spooky, creepy. You can see their guts inside. I have an all-time favorite moment, and I want to show it to you here. This was, I don't know if I'd say spooky, creepy, but surprising, maybe a little spooky. So this was an exploration in the Gulf of Mexico, And I want you to look closely over to the right of the ROV, and you can start to see something very large making its way into the camera view. And we were way up off the bottom, hovering in the midwater, so not close to the seafloor at all. And suddenly, when out of the Atalanta view, we began to see this big, dark shape. And all of a sudden, we realized, and you can see it here for the first time really clearly, this was a sperm whale. This was the largest predator in the whole ocean, had come to swim around Hercules.
How
Now,
deep was the Hercules at that moment?
over 1,000 meters deep.
Oh, wow.
So we are down, and this sperm whale has taken a big breath, dove down. You can see its eye right there, and what you're seeing there is its chin and a fin. And this was a teenage sperm whale, and it came and it swam around us for over 22 minutes, holding its breath. And there's not a lot we can do, right? We're in the ship, and the robots down there. We were, concerned we didn't want to impact it, but this sperm whale was in total control of this moment. It swam really tight right around the ROV, never bumped us, kind of came and looked in almost every camera, looked from the front, looked from the back, looked from the side.
Wow.
And it was just here it comes, down into the field of view, so swimming from above.
That's the melon head there, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, that I'm anthropomorphizing, which means I'm giving human emotions to an animal. But I think this whale was probably had no idea, in the same way we have this spirit of discovery, what are we going to see down there? I think this was a what is this and what am I going to see down there moment for this sperm whale to come and check out a giant robot in its neighborhood for very likely the first time in its life. But that will always be, I think, one of the most, surprising for sure. And I had been broadcasting on this expedition and on Nautilus Live, which if we don't get to your questions, all your questions today, you can always send them into the team in the control van right behind us on Nautilus Live. But I had just got done saying, I don't think we'll probably ever see a big whale because the robot has lights and it makes sound and it would probably be scared away. And then just the ocean loves to prove you wrong and boom, right. Sperm whale. So that's my favorite.
Wow. Jealous. I am jealous.
I don't know. I mean, are there sperm whales out here? Could we see one maybe?
Yeah, actually, it's possible. Yeah.
Never know. Gotta keep watching.
Like you say, you never know what a day in the sea is going to be like, and you're kind of in his neighborhood or her neighborhood. So I guess, I guess they have the right to be a little curious and poking around a bit. That's so cool. So I have a question from Mr. Rosenall's class. Nick, who's in grade 6, has a question about trash in the ocean. And this is something we talk about a lot, ocean pollution. So can you tell us a little bit about maybe what you see as you're spending a lot of time on the water, the impact of ocean pollution, and especially what's, some things that we can do and keep in mind when it comes to protecting the ocean and all of the creatures that live within?
Yeah, thank you for such an important question. To the first part of the question, yeah, we do observe a lot of plastic. Some of it is floating as the vessel is going by, and a lot of these plastics, they unfortunately they accumulate in some of the islands out here, in some of the atolls, from the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, known as Papahanaumokuakea, to even Johnston Atoll itself. We see massive accumulation of some of these plastics, and some of them do pose a lot of threat to wildlife. And then there's of course the breakdown of some of these plastics, and some of it does move into the food chain and some of the critters. um, and well, it's unfortunately a never-ending story with the plastics. It's something that, from what scientists are saying, is something we're going to be encountering for with the plastics that exist out there today alone. For millennia, we're going to be encountering these plastics from what exists there today. That's not to mention what's happening and what's going to happen into the future if we continue to produce so many plastics and dispose of them in the irresponsible ways that many countries dispose of them. Um, so yeah, it's there's a lot we can do. Of course, we can minimize consumption with plastics. There's sometimes ways to obtain your goods without having to buy plastic containers. There's a lot of more proactive places that are providing with refills when it comes to foods and even other products to consume. Um, and in some places, recycle is definitely the answer. In some, it's not. Like Oahu, where I live, there's incineration of the plastics. That's how they produce energy. Um, but there's always things we can do in places where we live by being proactive and removing trash where we see them, particularly in coastal areas. The number one threat out here is actually derelict fishing lines, anything that presents the threat of entanglement. So we focus a lot of energy in removing ghost nets and many different nets and lines that are discarded by the fishing industry, unfortunately. And we're talking about sometimes we spend 1 month to collect 100,000 pounds of derelict fishing gear out here, and that poses a threat to monk seals, to sea turtles, to seabirds. So we collaborate with different partners to remove a lot of the trash out here, in particularly in the shoreline and in the reefs. That's where the most damage is done, unfortunately.
Yeah. So wherever you are around the world, I think it's important to know that like downstream will always be the ocean, and then once in the ocean, the deep sea is like the end of that road for a lot of plastics, or it'll sink down. So, it may not, every action matters, right? And no matter where you are, if you see a piece of trash and you pick it up, you have just helped out the ocean for that day. And the ocean has already helped you. It's made the oxygen you breathe, it's made the food you eat, it's made the planet comfortable and habitable in a climate that we like. So, every time you do that little action, you are, giving back and helping. So I encourage you, cleaning up trash might not feel like heroic saving the ocean, but it is something that we all can do, and it really does make a difference. We found a flip-flop yesterday on the seafloor,
Yes.
and I was so bummed because I was hoping that when we be out this far, we might not see that kind of trash. But again, if you get rid of your flip-flops, make sure they go in a trash can. Make sure they go into a proper waste stream in your town, and that's something that no matter what town you live in, you could talk to adults, you could talk to your town about what are we doing to take care of our trash and make sure it doesn't get into the ocean.
Yes.
That's a great reminder, guys, that even the smallest things that we do, even if we don't live close to the ocean, we can still do small things to help out. That's fantastic. Okay, we have so many questions and no time.
All right, we'll go rapid fire.
Amazing. So how can we reach you? How can we send in questions and get more information and learn more?
Absolutely. So here on the ship, we broadcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on nautiluslive.org. You will be able to send in questions to the team right here in the van. You can watch 3 channels of live video from the deep sea, different cameras of what's going on. And then we're also on social media. So with the Adults in Your Life permission, you could find us on YouTube for all of our video highlights over the years, thousands and thousands of videos you can check out. But we're also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. So you can check out more exploration there if you want to get involved. But just know that we would love to have you come exploring with us. We have paid internships once you are 18 years old that we could bring you to sea and train you in ocean science, in mapping the seafloor, in flying ROVs, making films, telling stories about the ocean. So if you have a passion for this, there is a path for you to do it.
Yeah, and if one of your questions did not get answered during this session, please go on nautiluslive.org and ask the question there on the chat, because we have people there constantly answering those questions and there might be questions that you'll find that others are asking that will answer your question.
That's awesome. Guys, thank you so much. This has been so cool. What a great way to spend a Friday morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are. Thank you so much for being with us. And thank you to all of our friends who joined us on YouTube and joined us here in the studio. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. Safe sailing, you two.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.